Welcome back to Coronation Street Update. Tonight we're not talking about a single murder. We're talking about loss, grief, and the moments that changed Coronation Street forever. Because in Weatherfield, death rarely arrives quietly. Sometimes it comes with a crowbar. Sometimes with fire. Sometimes with betrayal. And sometimes it arrives just when happiness seems within reach. Over 6 decades, Coronation Street has delivered some of television's most devastating tragedies. Deaths that shattered families, destroyed futures, and left millions of viewers staring at their screens in disbelief. Tonight, we're revisiting the heartbreaking murders that fans still cannot forget. And trust us, some of these stories remain as painful today as they were the first time they aired. Let's begin with a death that still haunts Corrie history. Maxine Peacock, a loving wife, a devoted mother, a woman whose only mistake was being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Richard Hillman never intended to kill Maxine. His target was Emily Bishop. But fate intervened. Maxine returned home early, and what she discovered changed everything. Standing before her was a killer holding a crowbar. A killer whose secret was about to be exposed. What happened next was brutal, terrifying, and utterly heartbreaking. As her young son cried upstairs, Maxine desperately tried to reach him. But she never got the chance. The murder sent shockwaves through Weatherfield. Not simply because of the violence, but because an ordinary family was destroyed in an instant. And that may be why viewers still struggle to forget it. Because evil didn't target a villain. It targeted innocence. But then everything changes. Because some tragedies hurt even more when they arrive during moments of joy. Few examples are more devastating than Rana Habib. For years, viewers watched Rana and Kate Connor fight for their future together. Against obstacles. Against judgment. Against impossible circumstances. Finally, their wedding day arrived. A day that should have marked a new beginning. It became an ending. As Rana returned to Underworld to collect forgotten wedding rings, disaster struck. The roof collapsed. Concrete crashed down. And dreams were buried beneath the rubble. What followed remains one of Coronation Street's most emotionally devastating sequences. As Rana lay dying, Kate reached her. And in those final moments, they exchanged vows. A wedding ceremony performed in the shadow of death. A declaration of love moments before goodbye. The tragedy wasn't simply the loss. It was the cruel timing. Happiness was within touching distance. And then it was ripped away forever. And that's when things take a darker turn. Because sometimes the greatest danger comes from people we trust. Sunita Allahan's death remains one of the most chilling examples. A beloved mother. A survivor. A woman who had already endured countless hardships. But none of them prepared her for Carl Monroe. The man whose actions transformed the Rover's return into a nightmare. The fire itself was horrifying. But what happened afterwards was even worse. Sunita survived. She reached hospital. He still had a chance. And then someone deliberately took that chance away. A betrayal so cold, so calculated, that it transformed tragedy into murder. For many viewers, that wasn't merely heartbreaking. It was deeply unsettling. Because the real horror came from betrayal. But perhaps no death demonstrated shattered trust quite like Tina McIntyre. Tina was vibrant, fearless, full of life. A character many believed had decades of stories ahead of her. Instead, her future ended on a balcony. After discovering dangerous secrets, Tina became a threat to the wrong person. Rob Donovan. A man desperate to protect himself. A man willing to destroy someone else to do it. One push. One moment. One decision. And everything changed. Viewers watched in horror as Tina's life slipped away. Not because she had done anything wrong, but because she knew too much. The emotional impact was immense. The fan favorite. Gone. And Weatherfield was never quite the same again. But if one villain defined fear for an entire generation of viewers, it was Pat Phelan. What made Phelan different wasn't simply his crimes. It was his cruelty. His patience. His ability to psychologically destroy people long before he physically harmed them. Andy Carver suffered months of captivity. Months of hopelessness. Months spent believing freedom was just beyond reach. Only for that hope to be brutally extinguished. And then came Luke Britton. A man who got too close to the truth. A man who paid the ultimate price. These weren't impulsive acts. They were calculated. methodical, cold, and that made them all the more terrifying. What happens next is devastating. Because not every tragedy begins with villains. Sometimes it begins with a young life heading in the wrong direction. Mason Radcliffe first arrived as a bully. A teenager causing pain. A teenager making terrible choices. Many viewers struggled to sympathize with him. Until they saw the reality behind the bravado. The fear. The pressure. The toxic influence surrounding him. Slowly Mason began changing. Trying. Fighting for a second chance. And that's what made his ending so tragic. Just as hope appeared. Just as a new future seemed possible. Violence caught up with him. His story became a painful reminder that redemption sometimes arrives too late. And then there is Kylie Platt. A death many fans still describe as one of the most heartbreaking moments in Corey history. Kylie wasn't expecting to die that day. He was planning a future. A fresh start. A new chapter. Everything seemed possible. Until she stepped in to help someone else. That single act of courage cost her everything. The image of David cradling Kylie in the street remains unforgettable. Not because of spectacle. Not because of shock. But because of raw human grief. The kind of grief that feels real. The kind that reaches through the television screen. The kind that leaves audiences crying alongside the characters. Looking back at these stories, a powerful pattern emerges. The deaths fans remember most are not always the most violent. They're the ones connected to hope. A wedding day. A fresh start. A redemption arc. A family future. Moments when life seemed ready to move forward. Only for tragedy to strike. And perhaps that's why Coronation Street continues to resonate after all these years. Because beneath every murder mystery, every villain, every shocking twist, there are human beings. People with dreams. People with fears. People who believe tomorrow will come. Until suddenly, it doesn't. But that may not be the whole truth. Because even now, new villains continue arriving. New secrets continue emerging. And new tragedies continue waiting around the corner. Weatherfield never stays peaceful for long. The question is, who could be next? And which future heartbreak is already beginning? If you enjoyed this emotional Coronation Street retrospective, make sure to subscribe to Coronation Street Update for more dramatic breakdowns, theories, spoilers, and unforgettable Corey moments. Because on these cobbles, the past never truly stays buried.